What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Laser Source Podcast, the number one podcast if you like databases. We have some to share with you today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Kyle Spindrift, the number one drink if you want to try to stop drinking sugar. What flavor you got there, Kyle?
Raspberry lime.
Is it good? Do you like it?
It's pretty good.
Has it grown on you since you started?
Yeah, I mean, it started out pretty good, but it's been pretty solid for me.
Nice. In other drink news, Anthony has a Diet Coke with his name on it, so that's pretty cool.
Boom. I was stoked.
I love it. And in tertiary drink news, today's podcast was actually brought to you by Johnson Plastics Plus, the number one place online to get laser blanks and the like, some of which are safer than others. No fault of Johnson Plastics Plus, just reality. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today. But before we do, I do just want to give them a quick shout out because they do sponsor the podcast. They're the reason we get to do this show every week. They're the reason that you guys get to see a ton of the episodes that we upload. Their financial support is a big contributor in being able to keep the lights on here and keep things running smoothly and dependably with all of the help that we have. And so just a quick shout out, Johnson Plastics Plus, you can save up to 15% off almost everything in their store with the discount code down in the description. It's YLRZDF. And go check out some of their stock. They've got some great stuff. Like I said, we're going to be talking a lot about material safety today. There's some stuff that we're going to cover. A lot of it can be found on Johnson Plastics Plus's website. And just because it's dangerous doesn't mean you can't do it safely. So take everything with a grain of salt. Use a little critical thinking, and we're going to get through today's episode just fine. If you haven't guessed, today we're talking about material science, material safety. I've learned so much over the last, week and a half maybe, that I've been just like full timing this material database. As you can see, we're on the Laser Everything community database page, and this page has been coming up 502 or 404 for most users for the better part of the last week, and we finally have a little bit of a UI going. After Vinny passed away, pour one out for Vinny, I kind of had to dismantle our entire server because it was held together by a bunch of duct tape that only he knew how it was kind of all like strapped together. So I had to tear it all apart and learn how to rebuild it by hand. I've been teaching myself to do that, and we've made really, really good progress. I'd say like 95% of our online resources, which is what you guys keep coming here for, are ported over to our new server architecture and are running great. One of the last things to be done, because it is so complicated and messy, is our databasing, and it's a huge part of what we offer people online for free. If you come here, so again, this is db.lasereverything.net. Most of these links are dead. They don't go anywhere yet. They have scripts already written, but they don't do anything because I'm not done with the databases behind the scenes in the back end yet. But the one that I finished, and the one we're going to be focusing on today, is our material database. You used to know this as the material safety database. It had 4 entries. The big 4. I think we had ABS, PVC, EVA was in there, and probably one other thing that I'm not remembering. And you could drop it down. There were little accordions, and that was it. And it gave you basically a slap on the wrist every time you visited it to not laser process those materials. And that was all the useful information that you could get out of it. And that's changed big time. I've spent just countless hours researching this and trying to make this as good as possible for you guys. I'm really excited to show it to you. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and click the button here. So material database, explore materials and their laser compatibility. And we'll just click view materials here. And what you get is a bunch of categories. Pretty straightforward. So you can see we've got solid woods, plastics, metals, textiles, yada, yada, yada. Here you can see how many entries are in each one of these categories. We've also got a search function. I'll show that off in a minute. But one of the great things about the new material safety database is that it gives you a straight up material safety status right out of the gate. And it's meant to be glanced at so that you can take a quick look at it and be like, oh, that's dangerous. I shouldn't touch it. I'd just like to, since this is an early preview, next time you guys see this, we'll have like a huge disclaimer up here that says we're not material science experts. I don't have a PhD in this. Okay. This is for educational purposes only. You should not be using this database to make your own self interest decisions on your health and safety. Okay. So make sure you're doing research before executing any kind of laser processing on any material. Let me just say that out loud now. It's going to say that loudly at the top of the page every time I browse this once we are actually live with it. But you do have a safety status here that you can check out. And again, this is for kind of like at glance assessment of the level of trouble you're getting yourself into. And it is a multi-tiered system. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that system works after the tour. But here you can see we've got regular names. So this is just the material name. We have an abbreviation. So if something's abbreviated, like acrylic, is regularly abbreviated as PMMA, right? That is going to show up in the abbreviation column. Abbreviation column? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then you can edit me questioning it out. Common names. So a good one would be like, and this isn't going to be in the list, obviously, but if the name is Clorox, common name might be bleach, right? Something like that. And then technical name, if it has a technical name. That's what you get at a glance. Every material also is a hyperlink to its details page, which you can find here. So right now you've got the category, its status, again, the different names that it's known by. You can also find details about its composition. So if you're wondering what makes up a particular material, we have details about that. And then notes. And these are brief right now. I may expand on them later, depending on how quickly we get the other databases kind of migrated over. But right now, it's got just very basic information about notes on safety and maybe a processing tip or two. It's not a complete guide to working with the material, though that may be interesting to add later. It doesn't really cover that right now. Last but not least, you can see if there was an override, and we will talk about that again in detail after I'm kind of done with the quick tour. And hazard tags. So these are your hazard tags. So they let you know why something received the rating that it got. So these are pretty light hazard tags here. So fume is the source. So we have fume as the source of the hazard. The danger is that it's an irritant, right? So that is why the fume is dangerous. And then it gets a level rating. There's 3. There's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. And as those go up, they get worse. Again, I will expand on that in a second. And then we have a particulate with no particular danger, but it is a level 1 hazard. So what you're worried about when you're cutting maple are very minor fumes and some minor particulate. Those are the major concerns. So the system is designed to fetch this information and be able to assemble it live in a way that's easy to access, easy to digest, and actionable so that you know what you need to do in order to stay safe while you're working with the materials. So let's take a look at something slightly more hazardous, and then I'll break down the safety system for you guys so that you can see kind of how these values were applied. So plastics are obviously going to be a lot worse, right? Here for the first time, we're seeing critical hazard. This is the worst rating a material can get. If something has a critical hazard rating, you don't process it with your laser. Ever. I don't care what system or setup you have, the risk is so imminent and so immense that it's a matter of time until you're going to hurt yourself doing it. That's kind of how I like to think about it. So let's take a look at one of those. In fact, let's take a look at the most famous of them, vinyl, otherwise known as PVC. We can go ahead and click this here. And you can see all the same notes. This has been expanded on a bit more than the maple because there's quite a bit more to say. It's substantially more dangerous, and there are substantially worse hazards you need to look out for, like toxic gases. We have residue issues. We have corrosive gases, and it's more of an extreme irritant as well. So these are all things you want to generally avoid while you're laser engraving. And they're things that can damage your machine or acutely injure you, right? So that's like, it does not take repeated exposure to hurt you. Just limited exposure to this kind of stuff can be very dangerous. And that's why we never recommend processing vinyl with a laser. So that's kind of a look of how the overall system works. If you want to search for something, it's really easy. You can just type it in the top. You can search by any of these fields. The app does everything for you, so you don't have to say search by technical name or search by status. You just type in whatever you want, and it'll pull the results for you. So if I want to see only materials that are safe, I can just type in safe, and it's going to do, it does a fairly good job just pulling the safe materials. We have syntax highlighting here, so if something comes up as safe, it'll be marked yellow there. So you can see exactly what you're searching and how that's being returned. You can also search by the main name. So we can do cherry. And there you go. There's your cherry setting for wood. You can see how it automatically hides irrelevant categories, which is really nice. And then you can also search by common names or abbreviations. So if I wanted to do PMMA, you know that's going to turn up both of our acrylic entries. We have entries for solid and textile, both abbreviated the same way. So they both come back. And finally, the common names. So we could do something like flax, and that's going to bring up linen for us. So we'll get our linen result that way. It's pretty cool. So you can search through all of the main headings with one search box, and it returns the results live, which is really, really awesome. Before we move on, do you guys have any questions? I want to like pause. I'm doing like a huge info dump right now, and I feel like I'm talking a lot. So, and I don't want to go too fast, but I feel like this is important. So I want to make sure we cover everything. But what do you guys think so far?
It's great. It's very intuitive.
Is it solid?
And one thing I will add too, like, I know a lot of people are going to see this as bland.
Yeah.
But in fairness, if you're finding this bland, you're going to find an MSDS sheet like deathly annoying to read or go through.
Yeah.
So this is probably the lesser of two evils, even though you should be able to go through both.
And you should be going through both. Again, do not rely on this for your final decision making. You should be looking at MSDSs for everything that you process with a laser. Asterisk. Sorry, I have to do that. Miranda's watching.
I think this is like an intro to like easy mode MSDS, like you know what to look for kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's important. So
it may even be a good idea. I'm kind of glad you said that, Kyle. It might be a good idea to link to relevant MSDSs using the database. So we can provide the tools for people to do that further research that we're recommending right within the database. So if they're already looking at a material and they can see the hazards, we can be like, don't believe us. Here's our supporting sources, and we can actually list those MSDSs from various companies as files or links or whatever. And I think that could be really strong. That's a really good point. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people wouldn't even know where to start looking for that. So if you had that there as an easy link, then I think that's going to drive a lot of traffic here just for simplicity's sake too. Like if people know this is a resource, but they don't want to go through trying to find an MSDS for exactly what they're looking for, and they know that the site will have it. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad if they don't know how to go through an MSDS sheet. I went to college with people in higher level science classes who it was their literal education topic to know how to read it, and they didn't know how to read it. So it's nothing against you guys. It's just boring information to a lot of people, but it's really important.
And a lot of big words.
A lot of big words for sure, which is kind of where I like having this, because I feel like it's a decent translator too, so it's taking that complicated information and making it a little bit more easy to digest, which is kind of like our mission statement here, Laser Everything. That's what we like to do. So I want to keep us moving in that direction. I think adding the MSDS links or even the files, that way we don't need to rely on external resources, would be a great idea. Imagine having an MSDS search engine, like that seems really useful. So that's a really good idea. Now I'm going to take you guys behind the scenes. So that's all there is to see. It's really, I don't have that much to show here. It's a very simple system. It does one thing and it does it very, very well. And that's it. But now I want to show you guys how things are rated and give you a little bit more background on why things get certain ratings, why things are rated the way that they are, so that when you're reading this, you can digest that information a little easier. So I'm going to take us to our forms backend here. And we're just going to take a quick tour of some of the backend. So don't worry about too much of what you're seeing right now. Most of it is not important, but there are a few things I want to break down. So you guys remember the hazard tags we were taking a look at. We saw they are 3-part tags, right? There is a source, there is a danger that's coming from that source, and then there's a what we call severity. So how severe is that danger? The first thing we're going to take a look at are the hazard sources. Okay, so hazard source, again, this is where the danger is coming from. What about processing this material with a laser is dangerous? So we have fumes, aerosolized particles created by vaporized material during laser processing, often visible as smoke or haze. So this is smoke, right? It's actual particulate in the air. It's not a gas, right? This isn't like hydrogen cyanide that's like invisible and odorless. This is an actual physical thing that's in your air. Then we have gases. So this would be, and this is generally the more dangerous of the two. Invisible gaseous byproducts released from the breakdown or combustion of materials. And these tend to be far more dangerous to your health. Then we have the material. So this is an inherent property of the substrate that pose hazards regardless of processing method. So this would be something like this material is inherently flammable, or this material is inherently reflective. So even if it's just sitting there not doing anything, like it being itself is the reason that it's dangerous. Those get the material class. You'll see that a lot with like silver, copper, right? Where it's like we're having reflection hazards. That's when you're going to see this material tag pop up. Then we have particulate. Microscopic solid particles released into the air may remain suspended and pose inhalation or contamination risks. Rather than fumes, which are not directly related to the kind of long-term, short-term particles in the air from the engraving process, particulate's more like the stuff that hangs around, right? So like when you engrave a bunch of aluminum, you're doing really deep aluminum engravings, and you have kind of that floating, like just aluminum dust in the air that you can smell and taste. That's where particulate's going to come into play. Another big one, a great example is glass, right? When we're etching glass with the UV laser, and we're getting all that silica dust in the air. That's really where the particulate hazards are going to come into play. And then last but not least, residue. Deposits on the material or the machine requiring cleanup or maintenance, presenting safety or contamination concerns. This is anything left over after the process of marking or cutting has been done, right? So like sticky goos or dust that's settled on your workspace rather than in the air. This is like a tactile thing that's left over after the process of the engraving is completed. And that's all of them. The descriptions are more wordy than they probably need to be, but I wanted them to be really clear. These will be listed on the public site at some point as part of a key or legend. I just haven't decided how I want to integrate that yet. So you guys will have access to these descriptions to read them again later. But I did just want to go over them really quick to make sure that we explained it out loud. So again, one last time, these are the sources. So this is where the danger is coming from, okay? Next, we have the hazard dangers. This is the longest list, and I'm probably not going to run through the whole thing, but there are a few that I want to definitely touch on. So this is what about the source is dangerous. So what is the danger associated with the source, okay? Carcinogenic is a huge one. Releases substances known to cause cancer at repeated or even low exposure. This is really bad, especially with a lot of the plastics and rubbers. So you're going to see carcinogenic pop up a lot with those materials. Another one that you're going to see a lot of with high risk materials is corrosive. So this could be a corrosive residue, a corrosive gas, or fume. And anything that's corrosive causes damage to living tissue or equipment through chemical reactions. So it's actually reactive, right? And that's not great. Another big one, very obvious. A lot of us know it, flammable. Okay, so you might see a flammable fume. So fume would be the source, flammable is the danger. You might see a flammable material tag. You might see a flammable particulate tag, which would mean that the actual particulate in the air during the process can catch fire. And that's kind of the power of this tag system, is that you can match any source with any danger, with any severity, to describe dangers without having to like actually sit and finger through like huge descriptions or literature. So it's a really quick, easy way. Fragmentation may crack, chip, or shatter, creating sharp or airborne debris. That'd be something like glass, right? You get glass nice and hot and then like kind of thermally shock it. It's going to shatter, and that could be a danger. So you may see a fragmentation hazard. A big one that a lot of people don't know about, heavy metal, is a bioaccumulative toxic metal that accumulates in the body and poses serious health risks. This is something like lead poisoning, right? Lead is huge in old pewter. If you find like vintage or antique pewter, it can be loaded with lead. And so that is often going to pull up a heavy metal hazard warning for you. That can be extremely poisonous, and it can be very, very serious. Anything on the heavier end of the metal elements on the the periodic table of elements can be considered a heavy metal and can cause poisoning to you that way. So this is a tag that I've been really serious about making sure is applied in the appropriate places. And we're going to, again, continue to audit things and improve these lists as we go forward. But if you ever hear the term heavy metal, it's not because you're lifting big pieces of steel onto the galvo laser bed. This is a type of poisoning. It's very specific. Irritant causes mild to moderate inflammation, respiratory discomfort, skin, eye irritation. Think of like tear gas, right? So it's not going to kill you necessarily, but it's going to be aggravating to your environment. And so if that is the case, you're going to see irritant listed as the hazard. A couple more. I don't even think we've used the radiologic or biologic tags, but I have them just in case we need them. Reactive is just a different form of corrosive, usually used with a material rather than a fume or a gas. So if something is highly reactive, like sodium or what was the other? Graphite, right? Things like that, where the actual material itself is reactive. Typically, you'll see the reactive tag there. Reflective, we talked about. Toxics, just straight up, guys. If something's bad for you, toxic's probably the most used tag in the entire library. It pops up all the time because when you breathe it or eat it or touch it, it makes you sick. So you'll see toxic as well. Lethal is one you want to keep an eye on too. Between lethal, corrosive, and toxic, I mean, those are the three big ones. Lethal, I think, is only used once, but it basically means if you come in contact with this, you will die. So it's a tag to watch. I use it very sparingly on purpose so that when you do see it, it's very serious. So if you do see lethal in a tag, avoid at all costs. So that's kind of a breakdown of the dangers. Again, we didn't go one by one through all of them. I tried to cover the ones that were most relevant to the list as it stands right now. The last important piece of this three-part puzzle, okay, we've covered the source of the danger. We've covered the danger itself. Now let's talk very briefly about the severity. So we have the three levels we talked about that you guys saw in the safety tags. There's a level 1 severity, a level 2, and a level 3. If any material has 0 tags, okay, no tags at all, that would be considered safe. So if anything is marked on the DB as safe, it's probably because it doesn't have any tags associated with it, and you can safely operate with that, assuming you are following normal safety precautions you would take in a laser environment. Okay, nothing is going to be safe just burn with a laser whenever you want. That's not how burning things works. It's never going to be true, but safe is as good as it can come. That said, there are no materials in this library that do not have any tags, and that's where the override system comes in. We'll talk about that at the end before we open it up to comments. Level 1 is the baseline. This is caution advised, safe when normal safety protocol observed. So if you are doing what you are supposed to do, then you are safe. That's what caution means. So just because you see a caution tag on something doesn't mean you shouldn't be engraving it. It means you need to pay attention to what the fuck you're doing and behave responsibly with your equipment, right? If you're doing that, you can feel safe working with that material. Level 2 is dangerous, okay? And this is where we start to step up the threat level. Can be harmful even if normal safety protocol is observed, okay? So this is when you really have to start paying attention to what you're doing. There are inherent risks involved in what you are choosing to process with your laser when you're working with a material that has a dangerous tag. And dangerous tags mean that just because you're doing everything you should be doing doesn't mean that it can't hurt you, right? That's a really important distinction to make here, is that you can do everything right and this material can still cause you or your equipment harm. That's where the danger tag comes in. A lot of materials are marked as dangerous. Does that mean that you shouldn't ever work with them on your machines? No, I don't think so, but it does mean that you need to be extra vigilant. You need to be extra careful. You need to make sure that your ventilation is working 100%. You need to make sure that your eye protection, your skin protection are applied the way that they need to be applied and that they're doing their jobs. That's where these things are going to come into play. The last one is level 3, critical risk, imminent threat of bodily harm or death. And this is applied to materials where it's a not if but when situation, right? It's a matter of time until you injure yourself, your equipment, or someone else processing this material with your laser. I don't believe anybody should ever be working with any level 3 material. So if you ever see something marked with critical risk or critical hazard, that is where you're going to want to just not be processing that material. So that's the 3-level system. And the way that this was applied to the database, this is kind of the key part. This is how everything works here, is that if anything has any level 1 tag, it automatically gets the caution status, okay? If anything has any level 2 tag, it automatically gets the dangerous status. And if anything has any level 3 tag, it automatically gets the critical risk or critical hazard, I think it is on the actual front-end database, critical hazard tag. So that is 100% automated. So if we come back here and we take a look at, again, the best example is plastics, critical hazard, dangerous, right? Caution. So this has at least one level 1 tag because it's rated as caution. This one here, PVC, has at least one level 3 tag, critical risk, because it's marked critical hazard. So that's how that was applied. Now you'll notice that there are a few that are marked safe. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Alex, you said that nothing had no tags. You said everything has a danger tag, so there shouldn't be anything in this list that's marked safe. And that would be true if not for the override system. So when I had finished the initial list and completed the database, it definitely leaned a little more conservative than I wanted it to be on materials that were common in our industry and well known to be processed safely. Right? Acrylic's a big one, right? That's one of the most commonly processed materials that we use in this industry, period. And I don't want to make people feel unsafe doing that without giving them a chance to review the data on why it could be dangerous, I guess, is the best way to say it. So I had to implement a system where I could override things to make people feel confident with materials that are generally regarded by the industry to be safe. And so that's the override system. So if we click this material, acrylic solid, and we take a little bit of a closer look, you'll notice there is an override reason. And the override reason is just whatever reasoning I had at the time for overriding the safety value. Typically down. I have done a few overrides that have actually increased the hazard risk. But generally, we're going down either from dangerous to caution or from caution to safe. And this one, acrylic, flammable and smoky, but well-behaved and not inherently dangerous under normal safety practices. So for that reason, I marked it with a status of safe. So if you're ever wondering why something is rated the way that it is, if it doesn't quite match up with the tags that it received for its hazards, you can always check the override reason. One thing that I'm noticing is missing here that I will make sure I add after the podcast is override status, which will actually return whether or not an override has been issued. So it'll just say override status, overridden, or default, right? So if it's default, I haven't made any manual changes. If it's overridden, then you know that I've gone in and made a purposeful change, and you can check the reason why. So I tried to leave a breadcrumb trail everywhere that I touched something, so that you guys could see exactly how the system was put together, how it functions, why things are done the way that they are, and hopefully eliminate any questions before they even come up, so that the whole thing is incredibly transparent. And that is the system. That's the backend system that makes the material safety database work. Some cool things that you guys have to look forward to. I can't believe I've been talking for 30 minutes already. This is crazy. I'm so parched.
Where's your spindrift?
Can you drift me, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Team player.
Drift me, bro.
Drift me, bro. One of the cool things that's coming up is that this new databasing system that we're using is interwoven into all the others. They all work together. So if somebody posts a setting on the settings database, right? You guys remember, everybody's wondering where the fiber laser settings database is, the community one. If somebody posts a setting for something like PVC, thank you, on that fiber setting library, it will recognize that somebody posted the setting for PVC and issue the warning and provide a link to the material safety database for that material, which is really, really cool. So it'll all interconnect, and it all kind of talks to each other to know what you're looking at with the context and then provide you information. One of the other cool things that I was thinking about doing is setting it up the opposite way. So if you're scrolling through the material database, it could be like, hey, do you want to see some settings for your laser on this material? And that could be a really easy way to make the system more useful. So if I'm checking out birch, right, we would like click birch, and it would be like, hey, you have this laser, here are some settings for birch, or, enter your laser and see some birch settings or something like that, which would be super easy to implement. The database is the hard part, and that's the part that's done. So we can go any direction with this now, and it opens up a lot more doors as far as like how the whole system works. Yeah, it's kind of ugly and simple right now. It'll feel more app-like when it's cleaned up a little bit, but the bones are in. It works as is right now. So that is kind of the system. That's how it works. I hope you guys like it. We worked really, really, really hard on this, and I'm super stoked to share it with you. So that's what I've got. If you have any questions for me about how this works, now's the time to ask. Leave them in chat, and we'll swing back around to them. But
I love that idea of like being able to like start off looking up the safety of a material. Like if somebody's like brings you something and you're like, okay, what is this? And they tell you what it is, then your first step is, okay, is it even safe for me to laser on this? So then you go to that side and look it up. And then once you've established, okay, this is something that's safe to laser on, now you have the link saying, hey, here's some settings you might want to use. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it seems to, I'm not a programming expert, but it seems trivial to institute very basic user accounts where you can more or less pick your source out of the laser source database that, again, we also have, if you guys are familiar with our services online, and just assign it to your profile. So it'll be like, hey, you have the 60 watt M7 M-R. Do you want to see settings for titanium? And you can be like, yep, and just go. And it'll just take you there, right? That kind of like linkage and kind of interconnectivity, I think, would be really, really powerful. And again, we've already done the hard work for that. It's just kind of like opening the right doors and bridges to get things to talk to each other would be the only thing standing in our way of getting something like that set up. Of course, that means like less laser everything videos. Right, we've been putting out videos at a pretty slow pace lately, but I think the work that we're doing online right now is going to pay off big time for a long time for a lot of people. I'm really, really happy with this system. So
the other thing that I think is pretty nifty too about this is it's mobile friendly, right?
Dude, yes. Oh my God, can we talk about that really quick?
I think that was probably overlooked, but
absolutely was.
If you're talking to a customer and you're in the front of your store, you're on you're on the like a Discord or phone call or looking at an email on your phone, like you're not at your computer, you don't have to be to very quickly just identify something as like okay to do or not okay to do potentially by just doing a quick reference lookup. You can keep it hyperlinked on your phone. It's super friendly. It scrolls quick. It's super responsive. So that was I actually meant to give you feedback on that earlier, but
that was by happenstance. That's just because of the React Vue.js like setup that I'm using to build the app. It just kind of like mobile friendlies it automatically, which was very, very nice. So yeah, the whole thing looks great on mobile, even the main page, which has me pretty hopeful that like all of these will end up being very mobile friendly too. So yeah, as you can see, we've collapsed this down to mobile proportions, and you can scroll the whole list here. No problem. Click what you want, and it loads the whole thing in. Even the search box fits within this, so there's no weird scrolling. I think the one thing that Rhiannon had mentioned is that there is a sideways scroll here. So, but you can just swipe that, and it doesn't force the whole page to move back and forth. If you swipe this with your finger, it literally just swipes the table inside of the div back and forth, which is super user friendly. It doesn't really come across when I'm doing it with a mouse on the computer, but it works very well. So yeah, that's a great point, man. That's it. That's all I got.
If that question starred.
Did you start a question?
Yeah. You know what a really big wake-up call for me was while you were working on this week? When you sent me the information for vulcanized rubber, which is what hockey pucks are made of, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I knew there was a potential there, but like I was also like, oh, rubber's fine, right? Rubber's naturally occurring in the wild.
Not really. In fact, the best case scenario rubber is silicone, which you guys know because that's pretty regularly accepted material, especially now with UV lasers. That one scored the best. And it scored okay. All of the other rubbers scored pretty poorly in comparison to it. Vulcanized rubber got the dangerous status, but I think you can work with it, but it's definitely an eye-opener for sure. It's definitely something that you need to really pay attention to what you're doing. You can't just like mark this in your garage and be like, what, the garage door's open, it's fine. Like that's not going to fly for this kind of material. Yeah, dude, I learned a lot. There's a ton of very surprising materials in here.
You mentioned
wake-up calls. Tons of wake-up calls.
Pewter's a big one, dude. I did not know that pewter came with so many complications. Did you guys know that pewter used to be made with lead? I didn't even know that. No. I feel like I should have known that, and I didn't. But even... so historic pewter often contains lead, which is a critical risk heavy metal. There's no safe exposure threshold. Even modern pewter with antimony and tin carries a level 2 toxicity risk via particulates. Always verify composition. Avoid lasering unless fully lead-free and well ventilated. So even if it's not the leaded pewter, it's still classified as a dangerous toxin, which is not good. And I didn't know that. Lead's definitely something that I just kind of like threw down. That was the kind of one that just got tossed on and done without really any thought to what was going on around me or my laser. So I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. They've only ever done maybe one pewter thing, but yeah, I've definitely just always used my exhaust just to be safe.
When I was talking to Rhiannon about it, Rhiannon was like, good thing we haven't done any lead. And I was like, not while you've been here.
Right.
Because I've done tons of pewter at this point, so I've probably all leaded up.
I think we were worried about that snowflake ornament.
Yeah, that was kind of.
But that was kind of like a weird plastic on top too, which probably wasn't good.
No, yeah, I'm sure that was no better. Oh, one other thing. So the final settings system, when we do bring back the settings database, and it's going to be soon. That's the very next thing I'm jumping to. If we jump back into the back end here, guys, I am working on a separate library here for coatings that gets rated the same way as materials. So this is really cool. So you can see powder coat is marked as dangerous, right? Polyurethane sealer that is solvent based gets critical hazard. And you can rate different coatings the way you would different materials. And it was a very conscious effort to keep them separate, because now when you add a setting to the community settings database, it forces you to select a material and a coating. So you can see for both what your danger is, right? So if you're looking for, a setting for wood that's been painted with acrylic paint, then you can see both of those side by side while investigating settings, which I think is really going to help big time. I think that'll be really nice.
You know who I have to thank for knowing that there's lead in pewter? Mel Gibson.
Why?
From the Patriot, when he melts down the little figures into bullets.
I thought those were just straight up lead.
I'm pretty sure those were.
I thought you were going to say you had like pewter teeth or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just another thing. The coatings. I think
I think that's awesome. Yeah, because I think that's probably one of the most neglected aspects of it. Is like somebody looks at what something's made out of, but they don't look at what is over it. So that's smart.
You see, like all these sealers in here too, like the polyurethane sealer and the acrylic sealer. That is only there because I was like, what the fuck is slate covered in when it's shiny? And I ended up doing a bunch of research into that, and it yielded a bunch of the things in this list. And there's a bunch missing from the coding list too that needs to be added. There's obviously a lot more. I haven't
sublimation, for example.
I haven't expanded this particular table nearly as much as I've expanded the actual materials table, but it will be fully fleshed out, and it will get its own search as well. So if you're hoping for a page like this, instead of laser material safety reference, it'll say laser coating safety reference or something like that. So it'll have its own separate UI that you can pop in, and it may be sorted by like base or by active ingredient or something. I don't really know how they're going to be sorted yet. Maybe hard shell coatings versus soft shell coatings. There's a million ways that we could go with that. It's such a big world, but it will have a search. So just bottom line, if you are looking for information on coatings, you'll be able to go to a separate link just for that from the main database page, which will be really nice too. So
I think that's really good, because like a lot of people will recommend, like if you're trying to do like a paint fill or something like that, they'll be like, well, just seal it first and then throw it on your laser. Well, maybe if you're using the wrong sealant, you could be causing, obviously with the polyurethane sealer, you could be causing yourself or your machine some serious harm. So
and I'm also like really hoping that having this information will available more times than not. I'd like to push you should pretty much always coat your shit after it's engraved. I'm pretty sure that when we did Chris's table, I think his polyurethane was solvent based, which we just mowed through with that diode laser, which makes me feel like really shitty now.
Yeah. Someone commented on YouTube about stain, like asking if you should stain things first too, and
and I mean, my original answer stands on that kind of stuff. Like, they provide different looks. So what kind of look are you going for?
Right.
But now I have to tack on the giant asterisk sized, also you might be horribly poisoning yourself if you're not extracting appropriately, which to people that are into material science is going to seem like a big duh, especially with solvent based compounds. But, the more you know. I can't stress to you guys how much I learned building this. Things that I never thought were an issue, or that I never thought came with any risk, are actually extremely dangerous, or even mildly dangerous. And I've just not been paying attention. Like I said with the pewter, that's something I slapped on the table like steel and just whatevered it, and I definitely should not have been doing that, and that's going to change going forward for me now because of what I've learned from putting this together. So
another thing too is this kind of brings to light the like the mentality of a lot of people getting started of, oh, I have the laser now, but I don't have an exhaust. I'll do it next weekend. And meanwhile, they're burning stuff. And it's like, for like some woods, you could probably get away with just some like natural open air, like if you're doing this outside your garage kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like pretty much anything else, you are pretty much always going to want an exhaust, and you're always going to want to have it running.
definitely.
And depending on what it is, you also should be taking into account a fresh air return for replacing the air that you're evacuating and where that air is coming from. So like if you just have an open window and you're exhausting, you have a duct hanging out of it, but you're not sealing that window and air is coming back in to replace the air you're sucking out, you're basically just hotboxing yourself with dangerous fumes.
Yeah.
And that is, I can't tell you how frequently that's overlooked and how often I see it. It's incredible. And after a while, people feel like crap and they wonder why, and they don't make the association. So it is super important for your health and the other people who live with you or share a building with you.
Another reason why you should go through this list, if you're not already starting while listening to this live, is because like wood is a great example. Kyle just brought up wood. There's a lot in this list that I've overridden as safe. There's a lot in this list that I haven't overridden as safe. And it's not always because of fire. Things like walnut and teak, or redwood, for example, have compounds in the wood that actually off-gas pretty nasty stuff when you're marking it, and you shouldn't be inhaling that. This isn't even composite wood or layered wood or pressure-treated wood, right?
With adhesives and resins.
Yeah, which is all coming. Obviously, that's why this is called wood solid, but there are no other wood categories. So I'm planning ahead. We're going to be adding that stuff. This is just straight up wood. So that's where, you have to look back and really, sorry, I got distracted for a second. My Discord's going off. You have to look and really consider what you're putting on that bed before you put it on the bed. Even if it seems like something harmless, I would check against the list just to make sure that you don't have to do, further research before making a decision about something, because it can be nasty. It can be a nasty surprise. Walnut's my favorite wood of all time to engrave. There's no material I like doing better than walnut, and now I have to do it differently.
I mean, I will say that your space is at least pretty safe as is, but still good to take in the cautions.
Answer that real quick. Also coming up, guys, laser software. I've got a pretty nice laser software database going, which will end up as like a link list in the database. So that's kind of cool, especially with like some open source options in here for you guys to check out. So you might be able to discover some new software this way. We have the original laser source database, which will be coming your way real soon. This one's just about done, as you can see, pretty well filled out. One of the other cool things that I'm hoping as far as integration goes is that you guys know we used to have the files database, right, where you could find like manuals and things like that. Now that this is on the new system, I'm hoping that when you search a source in the database, it will just pull relevant files for you and say, oh, here's the manual for that, or like, oh, here's the spec sheet for that, check that out here. So hopefully that will kind of get better too. And then I've started right now, this is just for the settings databases, so like the fiber laser settings database or whatever, so you can pick your lens so other people know what lens you did the project with. But as I did it and as I was kind of setting things up, I was like, it'd be really nice to have a scan lens database too. I feel like that's something that could really benefit from kind of like a collective central, like single source of truth that people can reference, as far as like, oh, I've got this lens and it's got this serial number on it, or it's, made by this company, or it has this marking that I don't recognize. And being like having a place to reference that kind of information and get answers about what kind of lens you have might be helpful. So I haven't even begun to think about that or start that yet, but it's something that I've been thinking about adding in the future as well. So yeah, and then of course the fiber settings database is here with all the information you guys have submitted to it over the years. It's all there and safe. It's just being migrated, and unfortunately, that's a manual process. So it's going to take me a little longer to finish this, but we should have this back up in a couple days, and the UI and the UX will be very similar to the material safety database that you guys are checking out now. So
nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all I got. Again,
We got some comments and questions.
okay.
And this is your final warning for if you have something you want us to answer or feedback or comment on, then get into chat. The other Alex in chat says, does it make a difference with laser type for materials, fiber versus UV? It's a good question. It does and it doesn't. So if you're able to mark something with a fiber and it emits a potentially hazardous fume or gas, if you're marking it incorrectly with a UV, it is still, even if you are marking it correctly with a UV, it can still produce that fume or gas potentially, depending on what the material is. So for example, if you're marking ABS, right? So if you're marking like an iPod or iPod, Jesus, an earpod case, right?
That's old.
Really common ABS. Well, so if you do that with a fiber, you are like 99% higher chance of, not higher. You have a 99% chance of emitting some type of really crappy fume, or not fume, gas, right? Whereas with a UV, if you're doing it properly and you're working up from not marking at all to slowly adding power, whether it's through pulse width or frequency, you can work to getting a mark without nuking the hell out of the surface. You're reducing the odds of creating a huge amount of it, but there's still the potential of creating it because you are still burning it at a very surface level, right? So
Yeah.
Even though it's a cold marking laser, when's the last time you stuck your arm in the sun for 12 hours and didn't get a sunburn, right? Like, you're still burning the surface. It's just the very surface.
I highly recommend you watch this episode right here. It's just another episode of the Laser Source podcast. It's on the front page of the channel right now. The thumbnail says danger, not magic. And there's a picture of a UV laser. The title is Everything You're Doing Wrong with UV Lasers. And a solid chunk of this episode is about how just because the UV laser is capable of doing something safely does not mean that it does so safely by default.
Yeah.
And it's a very important distinction to make. And so I highly recommend you watch that episode for more information on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the materials in the plastics section of the material safety database that we were looking at 5 minutes ago actually have warnings about off-gassing when the plastics are heated, not even combusted or vaporized. Just heating certain plastics off-gasses them, right? So there's concerns no matter what. And you should always be working with proper safety in mind. Remember, all of our severities here are rated with the understanding that normal safety protocols are being observed. So these ratings aren't even just like you sitting in a still air room marking whatever the fuck you want and doing nothing to keep yourself safe. All these ratings assume that you're doing everything right, regardless of the material or the danger that it carries. A level 3 critical risk, imminent threat of bodily harm or death, means there is an imminent threat when you are doing everything right. So it's not as cut and dry as it seems on the surface. Even when you have a laser that's powerful like the UV, that does give you new options to do things you couldn't do safely before that you can do now. It's still a very rat's nest of a situation when it comes to safety. You have to do your due diligence when working with different materials. And the reason that this database is here is just to get you started, get you moving down the right path, get you pointed in the right direction. So,
yeah. So, hope that helps.
Well put.
I had to put this in. Miranda said me every time Alex told me he's doing this project. He just discovered something else we've engraved dozens of times. It was actually dangerous.
Yeah. New episode idea. New episode idea going forward. Miranda messaged me on Discord about 5 minutes ago saying that when we work with some of these materials now that we're discovering are dangerous, maybe we need a waiver going forward to protect the business. If we're marking something and there's like, oh, this could have residue, left over,
potential
or
off gas over time.
Yeah, if it off gases over time, and that needs to be worked into a waiver that customers sign when they get work done. That might be an interesting topic to cover another time.
For sure.
It's not really my wheelhouse, but maybe we can get Miranda. I'd love Miranda to come on and talk about protecting your business, with stuff like that. I think that'd be really interesting. But
liability coverage and education.
Yeah, because that's something I know very, very little about.
Bronson, the amount of times he's forgotten to turn on his exhaust is nuts. So I put it on the checklist on Lightburn and it saved me. That's a good call. Yeah. So in Lightburn, if you go into basically the drop-down menus, you can add basically a functional checklist that pops up every time you go to run things. So just kind of saves you if it's a barrier to starting a project without at least having to click through one more menu before you miss something. If you just click it without reading it, doesn't really help. But
yeah. I've kind of found, for me personally, when I get to my workspace, and this was before I even had the workshop and all that, if I get to my workspace, part of my setup process is turn the laser on, turn the computer on, turn the fan on, and get air moving, and then start working. So if you just do if you have the ability to just establish your workflow, when you start, just turn the fan on. That way you don't have to worry about forgetting. And that's because I'll do the same thing.
Our fail safe here is that the centrifugal fan is always on.
There you go.
So the boosters next to the lasers aren't always on, but I've started jobs before where I've forgotten to turn the booster on, and the centrifugal ends up saving me anyway because there's still negative pressure on the line, which has been really nice. The other thing that I do is I keep the, the AC Infinity boosters have the little controllers. I keep them next to the on button for the laser or right on the top of the bench top. Nice. So that whenever I'm there touching, either putting material on the bed or even just getting the laser turned on, the button is right in my face. So I'm like, how could you not push it, How we doing, Kyle? We're at 59 minutes.
Almost there. Yuri, also fans run inefficiently. If you don't have a positive pressure fan, bring air in. Yep. Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need a dedicated fan bringing air in to replace air, but if you at least have a available path for fresh air to enter the space, it makes an enormous difference versus having an enclosed box, right? Where a lot of newer homes are particularly built to be sealed envelopes with controlled air movement, you're basically sucking against your HVAC system if you have like ducted HVAC. And
or just straight up creating a vacuum.
Yeah, or you're just straight up like you're
turning your workspace into a vacuum tube.
You're trying to breathe through an empty balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. Like, it doesn't work. But yeah, that's absolutely a great point. But considering where fresh air is coming from, and making sure that it has a path to where it needs to be, super important.
Yep.
Led Zepp says, I do a good business personalizing lithium foam batteries. I've had some people say it's not safe. If you're marking the enclosure to a lithium battery, yeah, that's probably not awesome.
Fuck the haters. YOLO.
Yeah. If you're marking like battery banks with like an enclosure, probably ABS.
Yeah, right. That's like a separate problem. Still don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, educate yourself on the dangers and things through this list. But there's always an inherent danger. Educating yourself on it is the important part. And M says, if you're using a non-airtight enclosure, do you need an intake fan pulling air into the enclosure for your exhaust fan to work efficiently?
We've kind of covered this, but like intake is always best. If you can't intake, like open a window, like do something, open the door on the other side of the house, get a cross breeze going. You have to replace the air that you're evacuating from the room. If you don't replace the air you're evacuating from the room, you're creating a vacuum and it's no longer going to work. So the air has to come from somewhere.
I would also argue that having a non-airtight laser enclosure is actually ideal because it allows you to actually exhaust the fumes before you open the door.
Exactly. Yeah. On the mirror,
having that enclosure have negative pressure is super important.
On the mirror, I often leave the top down, but open the front panel door just to let the air move through. Yeah, it helps you. Your brain wants to be like, oh, if there's any openings, the smoke's going to get out, but that's not really the point.
Super good question.
Yep.
And we are caught up.
Cool. I saw Brandon said, I have a question. Alex, do you sleep? No. Just no. I mean, I do sometimes, but not
when time allows.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. Lots more coming your way, as usual. I hope you're happy with it. If you haven't already, make sure you go check out the LMA. It's the number one way to support the channel. It's where the vast majority of our channel support comes from. And you can find out more about that over at masters.lasereverything.net. We just released our UV libraries, which are also a constant work in progress. So if you need a quick starter library for your UV laser or any other kind of laser, we've got those over there, along with an amazing community that is ready and willing to help you on your laser journey. We've got the best guys and gals over there, and I really do love every single one of you guys that supports us on the LMA. It's the reason that we get to do our jobs, and I'm super grateful for that. Also, make sure that you smash the like button on this video and leave a comment. It will help this get to more people. Lord knows we want as many people to see this episode in particular as possible, but all of the podcast, all of the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified the next time we go live or post an episode. And I think that's it for the normal yada yada. Rhiannon is working on like the top 500 shortcuts for Lightburn video, which is going to be fun. So it's literally just like a lightning round of like Lightburn shortcuts. Yeah.
Yep. And just from being on some of the coachings that Kyle was doing, I thought of like a couple tips that would be around those shortcuts too. So those will be in there.
Nice. So we'll have that out for you soon. And Anthony, got anything going on over in Beam It Up World?
Some pretty big changes going on, but we can talk about it next week. And I will hopefully be able to get this lens video out soon because I've been teasing it for a long time.
Like good news?
It's always good news, man.
You selling tape still? You're not getting rid of your tape. Okay, good. BeatItUpLaserTape.com. Go buy some tape. And Kyle will add his link, because I never remember to do it, to his Etsy shop, where you can get infinitely extensible patterns for anything, down in the description as well. Super good deal on those. They're incredibly inexpensive. He's got hundreds of packs.
Pretty soon the focal tool will also be up.
Nice. The focal tool. We've heard a lot about it, but we haven't really talked about it yet. So we can talk about that next week too. But for now, guys, go explore the databases. Keep checking those links at db.lasereverything.net. New databases are going to start coming online really quick now that the framework is done. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And there's a bulldog. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.